Hello, this is a short introduction about the timeline panel that we are building in the Firefox DevTools in Nightly at the moment. If you're watching this video, there's a good chance that you're probably familiar with the Chrome DevTools timeline panel, which is a pretty great tool for investigating performance problems on your website. So we're also building a similar tool in the Firefox DevTools, and this is just a short preview. It's only in Nightly for now. It needs to be activated in the Options panel here, and you should expect things to move around quite a bit in this area. It's built around two major parts at the moment: the overview graph here that's updating live as you record, and the waterfall graph that's going to appear at the bottom when I stop recording. If I click here, I start recording, I see nothing's happening. If I scroll down, revealing this animated GIF here, I see things appearing here. Scroll back up, they stop. Let's stop now the recording. We see here that basically there's a lot of paint operations being done by the browser, which is expected because it needs to, first of all, I scrolled, and then it needs to paint the animated GIF at every frame of the GIF. So that's basically the structure of the tool. What we display here are 4 columns. There's only 3 right now in Nightly. The first one is going to be recalculation of styles. Second one, paints. Then layout, which we call reflow in Gecko. And the last one is the JavaScript part, so scripts that run. That last column isn't there yet in Nightly, but will be pretty soon. If we take a look, for example, at that page here, which is a pretty, it's just a copy of a Wikipedia page. I just use that because there's a lot of DOM and CSS, so it makes the page quite heavy. If I do something like toggle slow.js, which is like a function that I wrote that will basically just run lots of JavaScript, pretty intensive JavaScript, and then I start recording and try and scroll, I see that the scrolling isn't very smooth. It's not like a smooth experience at all for the user. It's pretty janky. And it's pretty easy to see with the timeline what's happening now. We see these huge blue JavaScript blocks that are actually using the main thread, which is the only thread that there is on the content page. So it's blocking basically the rest that needs to happen from happening. So the paintings that need to happen when I scroll the page really fast can't happen as frequently as they should, so we don't get like a smooth scrolling experience at all. If I toggle that off and start a new recording, then I just scroll very quickly. I see that there's only painting that's done here while I scroll, which is expected. Another type of things that the timeline panel is a good tool to deal with is problems in the rendering pipeline of the browser. So the rendering pipeline is pretty similar between Chrome or Firefox and other browsers. It involves calculating the styles when anything like DOM or CSS or window size changes. That leads to reflowing the elements in the page. And more often than not, it means reflowing all the elements in the page. That's the layout part. It's basically calculating where each element should be and what size it should have. That is followed by painting. Which means that we actually need to paint to all the different layers that compose the application. And the last part is the compositing, which means basically merging these layers in something that we can put on the screen. Our tool doesn't show compositing yet. So if we take, like, for example, a transition here, which basically slides the title here, as you can see, right and left. It's not very smooth. Again, it's pretty janky again, so let's try and see what's happening here. There you go. I just took a recording and just focusing on the first part. The JavaScript block is when I started the command here. It executed my function, and then we see a list of styles, reflow paint, styles, reflow paint, styles, reflow paint, until the animation stops. So that means that at every step of the transition, the browser actually needed to reflow the element, and probably, as I said before, the whole page actually, and then paint the element. And since that element is purely in the flow of the page, it's not like in its own layer or anything, it probably needed to repaint the whole page. And if we look at the code, we can see that it's a pretty dumb transition here that is using the margin property from 400 pixels to 0, which means that it's basically changing the box model of the element, which of course causes reflows. If we now run a second transition here, just as an example, I start, and let's do that, and we see a whole different story now. We see only restyles, which need to happen because that's the transition running basically. We do see a couple of paints, which I guess are due to the fact that this element isn't in its own layer. But the thing is, we don't see any reflows because no reflows are needed and no paints either, because the animating the transform property means that it's the compositor which is going to handle all of the job basically, and it's very fast at doing so. I've also used translate 3D here because that's supposed to be hardware accelerated, so it should be even better. So yeah, that's it for the timeline panel. Make sure you check it out in Nightly. As I said, this will probably change quite a bit in the near future, but any feedback, comments, bugs, ideas that you may have are very welcome at that stage. Thanks for watching.